This is Michael Cowan, and welcome to Trial Lawyer Nation.
You've got to have the right case, because if you take it up and it's the wrong case, then you can make some really bad law that's going to affect a lot of plaintiffs.
There's always an answer. The joy is in finding.
One of the reasons that I love being a lawyer is this exact process.
The way we live our life has nothing to do with the presentation sequence at trial.
As trial lawyers, we pick up and move on and keep going.
You're losing or gaining 1 out of every 10 jurors, which can really make a huge difference in the ultimate result of the case.
Whatever you think about, you create.
Learn all you can and never stop. And then have the guts to try case after case after case.
Welcome to the award-winning podcast Trial Lawyer Nation, your source to win bigger verdicts, get more cases, and manage your law firm. And now, here's your host, noteworthy author, sought-after speaker, and renowned trial lawyer, Michael Cowan.
Today on Trial Lawyer Nation, we have a good friend of mine, someone that's helped me transform my business and my law firm into something that actually makes me money from time to time and lets me sleep at night. Tim McKey with Vista Consulting. Tim is only the second person to be a 2-time guest, but he's got enough, I think, value that I have. I definitely, there's some things I wanted to learn from him, and there is things that hopefully he can share that will provide value to you. How are you doing today, Tim?
I am doing great, and I'm flattered. First of all, of what you just said, and I didn't know I was only the second person to be asked back twice, so I'm even double flattered if that's a possibility.
Yeah, Sari Delamotte was the first, and you're the second.
Oh yeah, she's cool.
She's awesome. So how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Still in Baton Rouge, Louisiana is our headquarters, if you will, but we have our team is all across the country, and I've gotten used to saying we were remote before remote was cool. So we had some insights about that when the pandemic came through.
Well, you work with law firms all around the country, and we are, we're hopefully at the tail end or near the tail end of this pandemic, although we're not through it all the way through yet. What are some of the challenges that you've noticed, you've had to work with law firms in, and more importantly, what are some of the solutions you found?
Oh, wow. Pretty broad question. I can hit on a few things here. I'll talk the obvious one first, which was having to go remote with a lot of our clients. And I just said, didn't know we were coming in here, but we were remote before remote was cool. So, we had office setups and Zoom, and we were doing some of those things before. So, but lots of law firms weren't quite familiar with that. So, we helped, and they figured out, and obviously we're not working with every firm across the country, but we actually helped some of our clients, understand how to do those things, working remotely. We have always been a firm that emphasized outputs as opposed to inputs. So when someone is not sitting in your office, you can't tell, obviously, if they're looking at their computer and doing, banging on the keyboard or whatever it is they do. And by the way, I can do a lot of that and not be very productive.
Me too.
But we were the ones that want to measure the outputs as opposed to the inputs, and not seeing people. We had to really coach toward, okay, what are the outputs? What are the key performance indicators of paralegals, legal assistants, and attorneys that we can measure now since we can't see them, and helping develop those KPIs is what we call them, key performance indicators. And actually holding the team to a little bit different standard. It's not whether you come in and work from 8 to 5. It's what is the output that you have. Even when the teams were in-house, we emphasized those outputs. Okay. But that's one thing. Just learning how to work remotely is one. I'm going to give you a little bit of an aside there that I think is interesting. That I think one of the big losers that will come out of this pandemic may be commercial real estate.
Yeah.
Simply because, and I'll give you one example. We're working with a firm in North Carolina who was bursting at the seams pre-COVID. All of a sudden, everybody went home. We worked with them on KPIs and things like that. And now that they're coming back, They've decided to do some shift, almost like shift work, but coming in at different days of the weeks and things like that. So their real estate issue kind of went away. So that's a positive.
Yeah, and honestly, Tim, we're really struggling with that at my firm because we've had our numbers are really, really good here in San Antonio, Texas. I mean, we have like a 2-point-something% positivity rate. The case numbers per day are really low, and we've got over a third of our firm is fully vaccinated at this point. And so, we've given people the option. And even before that, we had like a small, like no more than 10 people a day out of the 33 could come in per day. And we've given people the option of coming in per day, but not very many people are coming in. And I think it's going to be a struggle, honestly, to get them to come in.
Well, it may be. It may be. And again, what are your KPIs? What do we want? What do we expect, from our team? And if you're getting the production, my question, not to you, but to all of us is, does it matter? If we're getting the production that we want and we're able to measure things that are important, I propose to you that maybe it doesn't matter. Yes, the cultural part of things, and that's very important, can suffer. But I think there's also some things we can do to offset that, get together, on occasion and that kind of thing.
Those are actually two things that I want to follow up on that you've mentioned. One is the KPIs, or what is that? Key performance indicators.
Key performance indicators.
So let's say, like for a paralegal or legal assistant, what are some of the key performance indicators we should be monitoring to know who's doing well working from home and who's really slacking or lagging? Some people may not have the best internet, or they may have noise and children at home that keep them from focusing. There's a million different things.
No, absolutely. Well, first of all, we have to take those things off the table. We have to assure that, if someone is going to work from home, that they do have the proper equipment, et cetera, and they do have a segregated workspace and all that, because if you don't get that, then you're probably not going to be productive. So we have some, what I would say, non-negotiables in those areas. But the KPIs you ask about are really the same KPIs that they would have whether or not they were within the office. And I'll just give you some examples of, if it's a paralegal, legal assistant who's working, obviously with a lawyer under the supervision, and they are, the firm's criteria is to contact clients every so often. Okay. Then we need to measure that affirmatively. And generally you do that with a case management system or some other type of system that allows you to know that they are in fact making those phone calls or whatever your type of contact is, because we've discovered, and it's not a lightning bolt of something new, that nothing bad happens when you contact your clients often. Okay. Lots bad can happen if you don't. So, measuring those type KPIs, not just with the paralegals or legal assistants, but with attorneys, is very important. If that person is also the paralegals in charge of getting demand packages ready to go and that type of thing. And again, depending on the type of firms you are, then measuring if they are actually getting to the finish line with those things. We could go into lots of different areas. If you're getting med records, how many records are outstanding? What is your time that you started to try to collect them to when you did? Those intervals, and measuring those intervals can become key performance indicators to see that people are doing, being productive. And does that have a lot to do with being in the office? It doesn't. It doesn't really, because you got to be productive wherever you are, or you're not a good team member, right? And that's the kind of things we want to get reporting on that's good and solid, where you can coach. We don't want to go to somebody and say, hey, you got to do better. We need to go to them and say, hey, we noticed that the demand output, for example, is down. Tell me what's going on. What is the issue? And there may be very legitimate issues. But if not, we need to say, okay, well, here's the goals. Here's the things that we see you may not be doing, and therefore coach them up. So I hope that's just a couple.
Yeah. And I want to follow up before I go to the culture. And I do want to ask about culture next, because that's the other thing that I've been struggling with. I'm just going to be really selfish and get, thousands of dollars of consulting time out of you in this podcast. And you're worth it. I'm not saying that, but I'm fully taking advantage. So one of the struggles I had for a long time, with, you guys helped us develop a dashboard so we could measure the key performance indicators, but then you actually have to look at them, remind people, hold them accountable, and not have them either blow you off or forget to get to it. And, and even have conversations that are uncomfortable early before something becomes a bigger issue. How do you do that consistently?
Yeah, I think consistently, and I'll talk about one of the points that I say that we see in the top performing firms is that they have someone dedicated to that. There's generally, you can call them an office manager, a director of operations, a chief operating, whatever you want to call them. Someone is paying attention to those numbers. The fact that we collect numbers and we do nothing with them is a total waste of time, right?
Yeah.
So having someone who is dedicated to that, or at least dedicated part-time, and I know that's a little bit different. If they're doing one thing, they have to not let that bleed over where they're not analyzing those key performance indicators and noticing who is not hitting the firm standard, the things that we've really thought through and said, hey, this is what our standard is. And if your team members aren't hitting that, there's a reason for it. Okay. And we need to find out what that reason is. And, if you've been around us enough, you will always hear us talk about you have to give your team members the tools to do their job, the training to do their job, and you have to very clearly explain the expectations that you have. And if you do that well, and they're still not hitting things, and obviously the expectations have to be reasonable. If the team member's not hitting what they should hit, we have to ask ourselves, and we've done all those things, why aren't they? Are they unwilling to do it? Or are they simply unable to do it? And either one of those things has to be addressed. So that's how you do it. You actually just have to monitor it. Believe it or not, I've got a friend, an attorney named Steve DeBosier, who says it's work.
Yeah.
You have to take that information, you have to analyze it, then you have to apply it. And that's what we coach, and that's what we do.
Yeah, to me, one of the biggest struggles has been, one, to stop beating myself up on there are certain things I'm not going to ever be good at and are not going to come naturally to you. And me being the one to every week consistently review the key performance indicators and talk to people about them and make the time. I mean, I'll do it for a few weeks. I might even do it for a couple of months, but it's not me. I am a work on one big project at a time, get excited on one thing, let everything else fall by the wayside type of person. That's who I am. And so I had to learn to hire someone else and then empower them to actually do the job.
And that's why we built the systems that we did for your particular firm. And every firm is a little bit different.
Yeah.
Mike, I'll give you a couple of analogies that, Shaq is never going to be a good jockey.
Right.
It's outside of his realm, right? And if, the other analogy is, if you judge a fish by how well they can climb a tree, you're always going to lose that one, right? So we have to find out what it is that you're passionate about and good at, and get you in that position and remove as much of the other fluff as we can to people who are passionate and good at those things.
And I finally, through trial and error, and I finally found the right person and then trusted her enough to do it. But I also found I can't totally delegate it. So and there's just some things that if you want to run a business, whether you like doing them or not, you either have to do them, or you have to get an actual real partner that does them, or you have to work for someone else. And
no argument.
What I found is I can have someone else track the data and be the person that goes and, talks to people initially if they're not meeting it. But at the end of the day, I need to be what's called the chief reminding officer. I have to constantly, this is important. We have to do this. And I have to sometimes have the uncomfortable conversation, especially with a lawyer. Lawyers really bristle at being managed by non-lawyers, I found.
I agree with that, but that doesn't mean that it's lack of importance of that operations person to bring those things to your attention, and hopefully they can bring them to your attention in such a way that it's a list where you can dedicate an amount of time to that, and sooner than later get back to what you're really good at. The other thing I'll point out here to you is, we like to see owners get scoreboards. I mean, we not
Yeah.
to be confused with a dashboard, but a scoreboard that says we're winning or losing on these items. You know, our conversion rate for intake is a certain percentage, or our client contact is a certain percentage. But that doesn't mean you have to be the one to go and look at what made up that percentage. You know, that might be 5 or 6 people that are more that are handling intake or are touching base with clients, and that operations person should be the one to go and coach them. But
Right.
you should keep don't lose sight of that scoreboard.
Absolutely. I've also, and I don't know what you think of this, we now, for the our most important key indicators, which include client contacts. And that's just not a phone call. And I learned this from you. There's a very specific set of things that have to be addressed for it to be a client contact. Like, hey, how are you doing? And file review that has certain things in there. That's something else I got from you. And we run those numbers weekly at our weekly attorney meeting. It's a 5 or 10 minute meeting. But anyone who is not at zero, we go like, you're all caught up, you're 2 behind, you're all caught up. Hey, you need to coach your paralegal. And I found that the competitiveness of lawyers when you do it publicly, and I'm not doing it in a mean way.
No,
but I found that has made a huge difference. What do you think about that?
No, I like it. Given a choice, we fall on transparency in just about every area that we work in, and when we're looking at statistics, across the board, I'll say generally there are some exceptions, but generally we fall on transparency, and it's for 2 things. It's for to take advantage of I think most people have a natural competitive nature. Some don't, but most do. But the other thing is, what we want to have happen if someone is constantly at the top of, a 10 out of 10 and someone else is at a 7, I truly want the one at a 7 to go and say, tell me how you do that.
Yeah.
And encourage that inter-learning. We often say we do a lot of R&D at Vista, which is rip off and duplicate. It's, if we see something that's really good, now we would never share any proprietary information, but systems and processes, we're always on the lookout for what we think can help our clients serve their clients better. That's our whole mission. So if we can see it and we can get interaction even between clients, before we started this podcast, you and I talked about some mutual friends that we have in the industry, and you can learn a lot from those people. And we're not the corner on having that knowledge. We love to be the straw that stirs the drink, if you will, and puts people in contact where you can learn from others. I think that is, I think that's natural. I think I might have said on our previous podcast, and I need to go back and listen, is there's really 2 ways to learn. That is get your nose bloodied or learn from somebody who has had their nose bloodied.
Yeah.
Number 2 is a lot more fun than number 1.
Yeah. I think now that I'm over 50, I think I'm finally getting the ability to learn without getting my nose bloodied first.
Well, good.
It took me I got a very thick head. It took me a long time to just not make the same mistake 4 or 5 times till I realized I needed to stop doing it.
Never too late.
And the other thing I've noticed with working with you is that, sometimes, like I said, it just takes time for things to percolate. And one thing that, you really encourage us to have more meetings than we used to have. And we don't have time to have meetings. We're too busy to have meetings. And it took the pandemic to fully implement it. We were starting to get a little better, but now we have, for anyone who's available at 9:30, our attorneys have, it's not something you have to schedule around. So if you have a deposition or hearing, we have a quick 9:30. What's everyone doing today? Where's everyone going to be today meeting?
We call those huddles.
Yeah.
We have a little huddle where everybody catches up, usually not heavy information.
Yeah.
It's so-and-so's birthday, or, we had a great resolution or something. Not that we're not trying to problem solve there. It goes back to culture, Michael. Exactly. That's the beginning of culture.
Yeah. So we have like 9:15 lawyer meets, or sometimes the lawyer meets with their team. 9:30, all the lawyers have a quick meeting. If they're in the office, if they're in a hearing or depo, that's okay. Every Tuesday at noon, we have our case valuation lunch. We learned that from you. And people present their cases, and it's really helped, 1, get better value on cases, and 2, sometimes saying, hey, that's not ready for demand. There's some more work that needs to be done here.
You reminded me of something that may be interesting to you or to some of the folks listening in. we've heard over the years of the terminology of minimum settlement value, MSV. And again, I know you're a lower volume, higher value firm, but still, what's the minimum settlement value? And a friend of mine, a guy named Bill Biggs with the Daniel Stark Law Firm, he really turned me on my head one day, and he said, they don't use that terminology anymore. We use maximum settlement value or optimum settlement value. We're not just trying to reach the minimum. And, if you're around Vista a lot, we say words mean things.
I love that because, if you have the minimum, then people just think, well, we're just doing the minimum.
Yes. That's not what we want.
No,
so it really turned me on my head. And I dig stuff like that. The other thing I learned from Bill, it's not a pre-lit department. It's a preparation for litigation. And when you turn that a little bit, hey, we're not just trying to settle this thing. We're trying to get it ready.
Yeah.
And so there's a little bit of meaning that when you start using those words, it changes your perspective. And in my opinion, on those two things, it changes it a lot. And you also know that we use the word team member instead of staff. Totally different mindset. And it goes to culture again. That one in particular goes to culture. So anyway.
Well, what I've finally found is when we have regular meetings and we enforce them, it wasn't a 90-day wonder. We kept doing it. And part of it, we got forced to do it because of COVID, because we're all working remotely. And if we didn't have regular meetings, everything would have fallen apart. But once you start scheduling around them, you actually end up being you get as much work done without being as crazy all the time.
Now, that's been our experience. And again, I know you know this, but the attendees, we don't want to meet just to meet. We have a very specific reason for doing that. I'll tell you a quick story. In the old days, when I was a very traditional CPA doing what traditional CPAs do, we were always upset when in March, someone brought their tax information in and told us what they had done the year before. And if we would have known that in November, December, we could have actually made a difference in tax liability. It's almost the same thing with these meetings, that if you have the meeting, it creates a discussion, and I call it provide surface area. It provides surface area to move around, ask questions you may not otherwise would have. But at the same time, I don't want a free-for-all. We want an agenda, and we want someone taking notes. And the very first thing you do at the next meeting, you say, what did we decide we were going to do, and did we do it?
Yep.
That tends to move things along. And that's just part of organizational development and also part of culture again.
And that did we do it is such an important part, and doing that publicly, because it's so easy to let it slide because you get so busy being busy, you don't do what's important.
Absolutely. Totally agree.
Each year, the law firm of Cowan Rodriguez Peacock pays millions of dollars in co-counsel fees to attorneys nationwide on trucking and commercial vehicle cases. If you have an injury case involving death or catastrophic injuries and would like to partner with our firm, please contact us. You can reach DeLisi Friday by calling 210-941-1301 or send an email to delisi@cowanlaw.com. That's DELISI@cowanlaw.com. She will coordinate a time for Michael Cowan to speak with you in person or by phone to discuss the case in detail and see where we can add value in a partnership. And now, back to the show.
So you talk about culture, how do we maintain culture when we're not all in the same office every day?
I think, again, I believe on our last podcast, we talked about developing an intentional culture. And I'm going to double down. When you're not in the same office every day, you have to even more intentionally develop culture. The huddles that are either every morning or once a week or whatever fits your firm are important. Having social events are important. Having thought about what are your firm's real core values and what are your mission and vision. What are we here to do? And making sure that everyone understands it, and making sure that doing the best to create the surface area that everyone understands it. Okay.
Yeah.
And what is your part in that? your receptionist. We don't, again, words mean things. We don't call them receptionists at Vista. We call them the director of first impressions. And that's the person that answers your phone. They have to understand that little bit is the key, or a key, to get everything started with a conversation, or maybe with even a new client within the firm. And they fit in. It's almost like a Rubik's Cube of how people work through the firm. And we found a lot of times that, hey, and I'm picking on the receptionist, and we don't tell he or she everything. They don't need to know that. I don't think that's right. I think that they need to have a general understanding of what we're here to do and why their role in it is important. And it's that it's having some purpose. And I may sound millennial here, and I'm way past the millennial age. But I truly believe that understanding the purpose, at Vista, it's very simple. We want to help you help your clients more efficiently and effectively. And if you can articulate that, then all of a sudden, okay, that's what we're here to do. And it's helpful. It's meaningful. I say too that I like money and toys as much as anyone else, but I really get a kick when there's a light bulb moment when we say, oh yeah, we should do this. This is really cool and this will help. I think purpose is a big part of it, and explaining it is important.
Yeah, for the last 10 months, we've started every meeting, and I even got some comments back like, do you have to say this at every meeting? And I got this from some of the books by Patrick Lencioni, but we say our purpose, the Cowan Rodriguez Peacock exists to provide a special forces level representation of people who are hurt. Our core values are that we constantly seek to learn and improve, we share what we learn, and we fight hard without being assholes. What we do is litigate personal injury cases for plaintiffs. Our strategies for success are 1, to develop and support an elite team, 2, to attract the right cases, focusing on attorney referrals, and 3, to maximize the value of every case. And our focus for this next quarter is on developing and supporting an elite team. And I start every meeting, and people are like, well, why do you have to say that every time? We know that. I said, well, because I need to remember that, because if I don't, I will go and come up with some new, I'll read another book, I'll come up with another idea. I need to, and it's kept us on task, and it's really been a great decision maker tool too. It's like,
I dig that.
Have a close call. It's like, well, what are our core values? When we have a new potential case well, this isn't litigating a personal injury case for a plaintiff. Is this such a great opportunity that's worth changing our business model, or creating an all new set of systems? Because, if it's not going to make us at least an extra $1 million, no, it's not. And so we got it. And it's kept me from doing all the stupid things I used to do.
I really like that you do that. A couple of things jump in my head, 2 or 3 things, and I'll try to remember them as I go through them. I was on the board of actually wasn't on the board. I was the accountant for a little private school. And every time they had their board meeting, they read their values and what they were there to do. And it was very powerful. It really was. This is what we're here to do. It kind of gets you focused. The other quote that I like, and I don't know who said it, was that repetition is the mother of understanding. So over and over again. And then there's Samuel Johnson, who's a theologian from the 1700s, says most times people don't need to be taught, they need to be reminded.
Yeah.
And that's what you're doing, in my opinion, of going through those things. And there are probably some people out in the listening audience today that are saying, wow, this is really soft stuff that doesn't get us to the end of the road. I propose to you, if you have really good, solid systems and processes, and that you still have to have people that run them, and having people that care and understand what you're trying to do cannot, again, there's no downside to that. In fact, there's a lot of upside.
Well, I can tell you that, I don't think there's any way we would have survived the pandemic, especially survived without layoffs, working remotely, if we weren't working a lot on organizational health and culture. One thing I will say, though, on the values is it took us a long time, because one thing Lencioni had us do, and a couple interesting things he did is make sure the values actually ring true. Is this something you want to be, or is this what you really are? Because if it's something you want to be, we put that on a list of what we call aspirational values. We're not there yet. So, like, if we tell our employees this is who we are, and we ain't there yet, then that's hollow. That's not real. But he had a really interesting way to do it. So he said, like, come up with the list of like the 3 or 4 best people that you've ever had, and come up with a list of 3 or more, 4 or 5 people that made the law firm better by leaving. Mm-hmm. And then list all the reasons why the good people were good and all the reasons why the bad people were bad are not the right fit for our firm, and find your values that way. Was it interesting?
No, I think that is really good. I think that thinking through what your values is important. And I'll bring that back into an operational matter. Is once you do that, it's easier to hire because you have a target of what you're looking for in traits. Okay, I propose to you that we can teach people to do a lot of things in law firms, but it's very hard to teach attitudes.
Yeah.
It's hard to teach values, and going through a very intentional process of in trying to get a new team member in, and again, I probably said this before somewhere along the line too, is the worst thing that we have heard that we can hear is we have to hire someone by Friday.
Yeah.
Because then we don't have time to do those things to make sure that, or to attempt to raise the batting average of getting the right person. That's a cultural fit. Certainly we want the technical skills and that kind of thing, but they're a lot easier to teach.
So can you give it, because that's also, a huge struggle. And, I found job interviews just test how well someone interviews, and the people that like hop from job to job and falsify their resume tend to interview best because they got a lot of practice, and maybe they're sociopaths and they don't mind lying. So some people that have been great employees they just don't have great interview skills, and they don't need it. So what are some of the things that you found actually work for finding employees that have that, they're the cultural fit, they have the good attitude, the good work ethic?
We believe in the things that you just said so much that, in other words, trying to find the ways to do it, that Vista actually opened a recruitment arm. We actually help. Yeah, if someone needs something, we actually can help you do that. But there's no secret. There's no real secret sauce to it. We just do what we say that everyone should do, which is take the time to fish in the right spots, make sure that the ads and things that you're putting out there are very detailed. You ask for what you want. You interview for what you want. We have a longer than normal hiring period because we want to bring that person into the office. We want to have them interview and sit beside people that are there. And what we found, Michael, is so interesting is that once you explain to a candidate that this is how this is going to go, and it's going to be a little bit different than what you have possibly have seen in the marketplace before. It's going to take a little bit longer. It's interesting that they buy into that in most cases because they would rather, just like the employer, have a good fit and have a longer term outlook and a good trajectory of employment within any operation, not just law firms, but within any operation, than, hey, you have a good smile and you
right.
friendly, and we're going to hire you on Friday. And then they come in on Monday and no one has taken the time to even set up their desk. No one knows what they should be doing. Or worse, part of the firm doesn't even know that we have a new person there.
Yeah.
So going through those things through what I will call a very intentional recruitment process, whether you have someone like Vista or anyone help you with that, you can do these things yourself. But again, should you be is still the question, because
right.
It's taking time away from what maybe the real expertise of your operation is. So, again, I hope I'm answering your question, but it takes a little longer and you got to dig a little deeper.
Well, I kind of like the idea of y'all's recruitments. I didn't realize you did that because one of the issues I've had with recruiters is they are also getting hired by people that want to find a job. And I've had them try to place some people with me that are clearly like, dude, come on, you know better than this. But I think because they're trying to help their other client, they've tried to make some placements that just were not the right fit because there's that inherent conflict when you're representing both job seekers and employers.
That's why, again, the good recruiters structure their compensation around longevity.
Yeah.
And have some, I'll say, some guarantees.
Yeah.
And part of the guarantee is going to fall on the actual client too, because we're going to say, look, here's the things that you need to do within to keep onboarding them and keep them learning through their first year.
Yeah.
And by the way, I believe in fishing rather than hunting when you hire. And what I mean by that is, you've heard the term head hunting, people that go out and call and find someone. I really, have an aversion to that in that, if they will leave somewhere else and they're not ready to leave, I propose they may leave you for the same reason. So what we want to do is fish and attract people to your firm that are looking, if you will, or maybe they're not quite satisfied. And the way that we attract those people has to do initially with just how we present the potential employer. And then maybe we even put some things going back to culture. We have a little bit of a funky culture. Our culture is this, and then when we do the interview process, they actually can see and feel some of that. And you're more likely, again, you're never going to bat 1,000, but you're more likely to raise the batting average to get someone good in, because once again, and you know this, that you cannot measure the cost of a bad hire.
No, absolutely.
That's why I propose you should do everything you can to raise that batting average, to get the right person in and have them outline what their career path is and all those things that generally don't happen. We try to make happen, and that's what raises the batting average.
Yeah, we're even trying to start we do not have a paralegal opening, and we're hoping not to have one anytime soon. But we're starting to identify people that are potential candidates and to start training them now, so that when eventually, either through growth or attrition, there's an opening, we don't have to go to the outside.
No, I think that's very, very wise. We're all about cross training too.
Yeah.
And promoting up first. Look within first before you go out. And what we found most times is, let's just say, and I don't want to differentiate too much between a superior and a lower level position, but it's usually easier to promote someone from within that into some step up, if you will, level them up, as opposed, and it's easier to backfill that lower level position and begin the training process there. So,
well, one of my biggest struggles in hiring are actually with a paralegal and what I call docket lawyer, a lawyer that's going to handle a docket on their own positions, because we have, over the last 20-something years, developed a way of doing things that's very specific and it's not negotiable.
I know that.
And we have a lot of struggle with people coming from the outside that have done it a different way for 20 years and don't want to or don't realize why. It's like, I'm doing it this way because I got my nose bloody when I did it your way.
So ladies and gentlemen of the audience, I'm going to consult with Michael Cowan. You bring that guy or girl lady in, and you show them what the non-negotiable Cowan Law Firm way of doing things are, and you communicate very clearly that it is in fact non-negotiable. So if you have issues, then you may not fit here. And that doesn't mean we don't like you, love you. You might be a great lawyer, but we're going to do things your way. And those are non-negotiable. And by the way, here are the key performance indicators that we're going to be watching. Here are the things that we want you to know. And again, when you get that right person who really gets excited about that because they come from a place of chaos, they like that structure.
Yeah, I find it's a 6 to 12 month adjustment period. And part of it is, them, me realizing I really meant it. And it's not just, I have to keep saying it over and over again and reminding people over and over again. And two, the couple times when they slip and they see the consequence. Right. Like, oh, there's a reason why we do it this way. Yeah, it works better. We don't do extra work because we want to do extra work. We do these things because we don't do them, bad things happen.
Absolutely. It goes back to a little bit what I've talked about earlier, the why behind things. Yeah. Why do we do things? I'm reminded of a time when we were part of my team had a meeting the following day, and the young associate didn't want to make all the copies the night before that we would need, and he in fact didn't. And so the next morning, when the copy machine had a problem, we had a crisis.
Yeah.
If we would, if part of our system is that we prepare for meetings at least a day in advance, if at all possible, then those are the whys.
Yeah.
And once they get ingrained, and I'll go a step further and say that they become a discipline. I'll say the highest performing firms develop a discipline. Not that, you can't be motivated to do things for a short period of time, but when you develop a discipline, it's very different. And it might not look like it, but I go to the gym 3 days a week, and I even when I don't want to, even if I walk through and don't do much, I have this discipline that has somehow gotten in there. And again, I'm not saying that's better than anybody else or anything like that, but you can develop those type of things, along the lines of client contact.
Yeah.
And we always say that we have one question that has to be asked before you move on in a case is you have to ask the client truly, how are you doing? Tell me what, and that's the one question, Michael, that we want, either face to face or on the phone, because in a text or an email, if somebody says, I'm okay or I'm fine, you can hear it, I'm okay, then you want to dig deeper, right? So there's a little bit of discipline that comes into those type things. Well, I text them and they said they're fine. Well, no, that's not the deal. Anyway.
I mean, you text someone to say, reminder, you have a deposition tomorrow. Reminder, you got a doctor, or what did the doctor tell you at your appointment tomorrow? That's a great text. How are you doing? How are you feeling? Do you need help getting to the doctor? Those are in-person questions.
Absolutely. In person or on the phone for sure.
Do you have any concerns you want to talk to the lawyer about? I mean, and so you don't wait until the client calls upset. You do it in advance on a regular basis.
Oh, absolutely. I'll tell you one other thing that we noticed in some firms that are not performing as well, and it's just an indicator of some things that need to be worked on, is one of the questions we ask usually paralegals or legal assistants, whatever your terminology is, case managers, is how much time do you spend on the phone answering questions from clients who are checking on their case? And we've heard anywhere from 5% to 75%. And, that tells us that they're not doing a good job in proactive client contact, which is one of the key performance indicators. And it just, it's a time suck. And when we hear that, we know that there's not a lot of discipline in place at this particular time. Doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It doesn't mean, but it needs to be worked on.
Yeah. And it's always going to be a work in progress. You're never going to get it perfect.
Always.
Are you interested in attending Cowan's Big Rig Boot Camp? This year, we'll be hosting the seminar in San Antonio, Texas on May 20th, 2021. In-person seating is available, but will be limited per state guidelines in order to provide a safe event. And if you'd like to attend virtually, we'll be offering another professionally produced seminar available via Zoom. For more information, visit www.bigrigbootcamp.com to sign up for our mailing list and find out details as soon as they're available.
I want to talk a little bit more about culture. Now that we're getting back to having the ability to work in offices again. I know some firms have been working in offices all the time. I know mine is we're slowly starting to transform from all virtual to we have, I'm actually in my office right now, some optional in office, and eventually some people are going to have to work in the office. And so what are some things, though, when people are working virtually, but you can get together again? So, because the Zoom happy hour gets old real quick.
Yep.
What are some things we can do to keep our firm culture and keep together if we're going to work remotely?
I think, the Zoom happy hours are one thing. I think those morning huddles that you're talking about, where it's not long and not serious, and to maintain those regular meetings that were happening in-house, that doesn't mean that there can't be some levity at some point later if you want to do, once every 2 week get together to just talk, but that it really doesn't work. Culture really comes from the day-to-day touches, from within. I'll tell you something that we do in Vista that we've shared before that it's really become part of our culture, is that if something good happens, no matter where, with all of our consultants or team members, that that it's something good that maybe a client said, or there was a victory in getting a process in place. Everybody has the right to send an email to everyone else on our team with the caption and the subject that's just HSD. And that HSD stands for High Satisfaction Day. And it's basically bragging on yourself a little bit.
Yeah.
That, hey, we got this accomplished and such a team is happy with this. Or let me snip an email that someone gave us a thank you because something happened. We share that with the team, and it takes 3 minutes to do it, but just about now what happens is just about every team member jumps on that, way to go, kudos or some, and it keeps us going a little bit. And it does the other thing of remind us what we're in business to do. I propose to you that just about all business is relationship driven. And maybe I'll change that to say all business is relationship driven. If I wanted to work for you just because you were going to send me a check, is probably not a good way to start things.
Yep.
I'm going to throw a name out here that maybe people will be happy, or maybe they love him or they hate him. But Nick Saban, the football coach at Alabama, talks about process.
Absolutely.
Process. And we believe that too. We glance at the scoreboard. We want to make sure the score is where it should be. But I still propose to you, if your processes are solid, you're going to win a lot more than you lose.
You can love Nick or hate Nick, but he wins a lot of games, and you can't.
That was my point. He wins a lot of games. And it's over and over and over again. And I like that. But I also say that goes all the way back to Vince Lombardi. You heard his famous statement, gentlemen, this is a football. We got to start with basics. John Wooden, let me show you how to put on your socks. These principles are not old. We just need to be reminded.
Yeah.
And,
I have 30 minutes with Jimbo Fisher tomorrow, so I'm trying to think on what I'm going to ask him. But I'm more interested in about process and how he's so tough on people and have them still love him.
Yeah, well, that's tough, and I'll jump in with another quick story. And I know, Michael, I'm probably not hitting everything you want, but
that's okay. I'm loving this. Yeah, Bear Bryant.
Bear Bryant, way
used
back
to coach for Texas A&M before he went back to Mama at Alabama.
Right, but when he coached at A&M, you may know the story when he took the kids to Junction.
The Junction boys, yeah.
The Junction boys. Well, I think he left with 70 and came back with 45 or 50. I don't remember the exact numbers, but
it was awful. Yeah.
But later, what he realized and what he wrote in his, I think it was an authorized autobiography, was he admitted, if you will, that he made a mistake there. He treated everybody equally, and it happened to be equally bad. But what he realized later was that what people want is to be treated individually. And he learned who he needed to kick in the butt and who he needed to pat on the butt to get the performance. That's what we do every day. And I'm not saying we scream and yell at our team members here. That's not it. But sometimes, consequences mean things more. And, you can, and if you're good at managing, which again, going back to that COO, that operational person, the good ones can recognize that. Just like Bryant recognized he had a talent for it.
Yeah.
Good operational people can recognize that what motivates and inspires people to develop a discipline. That's what we're trying to do. So, again, off the subject, maybe a little.
No, that's not. I talk about college football all day long too. But yeah, no,
Hey, you mentioned one other thing, and I got off the subject earlier about what happened through the pandemic. What did we notice? And I think we only hit we only hit on the remote thing.
Yeah, what are the other things you found?
Well, what we saw was really a downturn in intakes in most cases, especially not generally maybe for your firm.
No, everybody.
Everybody had a downturn in intakes. Well, I propose to you that that's time really to take stock in looking at the cases that are in-house, and really, there's two ways to grow a law firm. It's to get more cases, have more cases, and to increase value. That in the early days, and maybe still even now through the pandemic, while case volume may be down a little, concentrating on that adding value area and what can we really do there. We saw firms increase case values, which actually made up for the lack of volume. But I also propose to you that there's generally in firms, especially the higher volume firms that need trial dates to force resolution of cases, and those trial dates went away, that there's a reservoir of cases that are there that will eventually go over the dam. We just have to realize that there's a dip. And you asked me about books earlier.
Yeah.
Seth Godin wrote this little book that just about dip. The dip is when we know that you're going to come out of something better, but by starting the process of improvement, you may go down a little bit first.
Right.
Recognizing that your firm may be in a little bit of a dip, but you have a reservoir of cases, and you really should be concentrating on higher value and adding value. We've seen firms that actually didn't experience as much of a dip as they otherwise may have. It's funny too that most lawyers that are practicing law and not necessarily running a firm, they want a real heavy, generally a heavier caseload. But there's only so many, if you think of it as a reservoir, there's only so many that can go over the dam anyway.
Right.
Let's concentrate on the ones that are there, not the ones that are coming in to your reservoir. Your reservoir may be a little bit low, but it's not dry.
I found there is an optimal, and I'm still focusing on what it is, and it's different depending on the case value and how much work it is. But there's a level at which adding more cases actually decreases the revenue because you're just putting out fires all the time. And you don't have time to move it forward, and you're getting continuances. You're not able to send out a demand, or you're doing it half-assed because you don't have time to really read everything. So, and of course, if you have too few, that's a problem too. But just finding that number, and it can be lower than you think it is.
We use the word optimum. And most times we say we want to maximize things, but again, if you go back to my theory of words mean things, that a lot of times when you maximize, let's think about a machine. If you're maximizing its output, it's much more likely to break down and have deficiencies.
Right.
If you back off just a little bit and try to find that optimum speed, if you will, and effectiveness, then it's more likely that your system will last much longer. In the example of a machine, the machine will last much longer. I think it works that way through our businesses. I know, again, using our firm as an example, we have an optimum number of clients and customers that we can service and service very well. It's hard to tell someone, hey, you know what? I'm not going to be able to get there for a couple of months or whatever the term is, but we explain the why. Like you said, you get too many in the system, it can actually muck up or slow down the system itself, and then everyone suffers. So it's up to, I'll say, you and me as the managers to look at those things and make those decisions. And I'm not going to say we make the decisions right all the time, but if you ignore and you want to say we want to maximize everything, I propose to you, your machine might break down, and it takes longer to fix one that's totally torn up.
Well, even pushing a case to trial or not. So, most of the time, if you say no, 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 and you get all the way to the courthouse, you will get a higher offer than if you settle 6 months before.
Yeah.
Now, on a catastrophic injury or death case, it's almost always worth pushing it. There are other cases where the increase in value versus the increase in the expenses the client's going to have to pay. And frankly, if you look at the amount of attorney work you have to do for that, you may be better off taking $10,000 off your fees and getting it done 6 months in advance than doing $50,000 of legal work to make the extra 10 or 15 grand.
And I propose to you that, and I know you do this, you should think about those things and analyze those cases on just the criteria that you laid out. Because lots of times when we're working so hard and so fast, we will miss that. And again, I'm not talking about your firm or any firm in particular, but you don't want to settle short, and that's not good for the client. And you don't want to do what you just said, saying it's going to take another 6 months to get you another X, and X is not worth it. So that's that optimum.
Or at least tell the client that's what it is, and they can decide whether X is worth it. No, most of the time, they're much more anxious to settle the case than we are most of the time. They may say otherwise, but when you put it to them like, I can get $500,000 in your pocket today, or you can wait another year and maybe get 550 or 600. Usually within a week or two, they're going to say, "Can we just get this thing done? I've got stuff to do."
Yeah. No, but that's again where I say that you as a lawyer should take his lawyer cap off and put the counselor cap on, because you're an attorney and counselor at law.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, sometimes we miss that counselor part. And I think that's very important. And when you're in tune with that and you're in tune with the client, you can get that right more often than not.
Enjoying the episode? Do you wish you had Trial Lawyer Nation on the go? Well, wish no more. The Trial Lawyer Nation app is available now exclusively on iOS devices. Access our entire podcast library, create a favorites list, search for old and new episodes, and much more. It truly is Trial Lawyer Nation at your fingertips. Download this free app now and enjoy the top legal podcast for plaintiff attorneys wherever you go.
So what do you see as some of the opportunities for personal injury firms as we're moving out of the pandemic to improve?
No, I think we need to take stock of what silver linings that the firms may have found through the pandemic. We talked earlier about real estate. We talked about being much more reliant on measuring outputs and KPIs and looking at firm criteria than we may have otherwise been when we could walk down the hall and see that Jimmy and Susie are in their office and they sure look busy. So that's good. I propose that measuring some of the good that's come out of it, and I don't think that was your exact question, but
yeah,
I think we should look at those things. What did we learn? Our entire conference last year we did virtually, and we pivoted, and within that's a word that I don't like, but we changed and we decided that we were going to go from in person to virtual, and in a couple of weeks our team tackled that, and we learned so much about how to put on a virtual event that now all of our events are going to be hybrid, even if we can go there. By the way, we're having a conference in Dallas on the 6th and 7th of May.
Yeah, unfortunately, we're not airing till the May. Yeah. Yeah. No, we're going to air on the 15th, so that's perfect.
Yeah, of May. Again, this is not about selling our conference. It's about we're doing it in person, and we're also going to stream it. And
you have if I wasn't in trial that week, I would be there. You have I get your emails and I actually read them. And you've got I'm going to talk to my operations manager and see if she can make it. But it's definitely something I thought would be very useful.
Well, look, we learned a lot, and we're trying to, I think, again, it's a little bit more of a life philosophy is what, when you do get your nose bloodied, you have to take a step back and say, what did I learn? And sometimes we learn some things that are very helpful. I'm going to touch on one thing, and I know we're probably getting close to time, but when we touched on before the podcast began was, what has happened in Arizona with
Utah with the public ownership.
Yeah.
The non-lawyer ownership.
Arizona was the first, I think.
Oh, Arizona's done it? I know Utah just did it.
Yeah, Utah just did it, and there's a couple of other states that are in line. And again, I'm not going to tell you that I know exactly what's going to happen with that.
Well, explain what it is, because I don't think you and I understand each other, but we haven't articulated what we're talking about.
Well, there were laws passed within those states that now allow non-lawyers, non-attorneys to own a part of a law firm. And there's a whole lot of discussion about what does that mean. There's a concern about ethics. There's a concern about big maybe hedge funds or public or private money coming in and attempting to direct settlements and things like that within firms. Certainly there's a concern of that. It could happen. My personal belief is that it won't because, that I know lawyers and you guys can be pretty hard-headed. You know what you want and you know how you're going to ethically treat a client, and no matter what, it's more about, it's more about getting that done. Yeah, money and toys are great, but you're not going to risk licensure and that kind of thing because somebody wants you to settle a case to hit a specific number.
I wish I had your confidence, because I've seen that happen in law firms owned by owners, owned by lawyers, unfortunately.
No, and I have too, but I propose that there's going to be now some real lines between what can happen there in regard to the owners that are not lawyers and the owners that are lawyers. There's going to be some discretion that has to be put in place. We at Vista, we've looked at what happened in Australia because they've had non-lawyer ownership for a while. Totally different system. They don't have the contingency system as much as we have here in the States. But it's kind of the wild, wild west over there. In other words, they don't have many rules in Australia, but contrast that with they have non-lawyer ownership in the United Kingdom and in England. They have many rules that you can do this, you can't do that. There are firewalls in place. Right now, we don't know exactly what the rules are going to be within these states, and I propose to you that, like anything else in this country, states are proud to be a state, and they want to say we're going to do it our way.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a lot of different ways. Maybe they'll line up, but they haven't started to do that yet. So what the criteria may be in Utah may be different from Arizona. I think it's California and Florida that are the other two that are really looking or close on that.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that we have the crystal ball of how this is going to work, but I will tell you we're watching it very closely. I think that we've already seen some firms, even pre non-lawyer ownerships, that are becoming large national firms. I'm not going to mention any names, but you probably know the big one that's out there that's going across the country. It have nothing but great. That's good. But I think that we're going to see that more as a trend. I don't think it's within the next year, but in the next 10 years, I think we're going to see some consolidations. I think we're going to be looking at things a little bit differently. And, we're trying to, as someone that wants to be kind of on the bleeding edge of what's going on, I mean, that's our business to see that and advise. We're watching it very, very closely. Again, I don't have any advice or anything other than to be aware that these things are out there. And, we always say that the most well-run firms from a business standpoint, and have really good lawyers too, are going to be the most attractive and the ones that the larger entities are going to want to bring into their fold.
Yeah.
Good or bad, you think what you might think, that the horse has kind of left the barn on that. It's here now. We have to.
And I do see it more and more, at least in the bigger markets, the big cities, more and more consolidation, more and more of big. It used to be, and I've been able to survive, but it used to be despite this, but it used to be the big advertising firms would settle what they could pre-lit and then refer out litigation. And now a lot of them have realized they would be better off hiring good litigators and paying them well. And they don't do that as much anymore. And so those firms are eating up a lot more of the cases, putting a lot more money into advertising. And I think it is getting harder and harder for other people to get sustainable practices. There's ways you can do it, but you've got to have your niche. You've got to have your tribe. You've got to do it really well. But I do see that trend.
100% with that. There's going to be a lot of people who shop at Walmart, but there's going to be probably more people that shop at Walmart. But that corner hardware store that caters to the niche, the people who need very specific hands-on, I think they can still do well. You have to decide. Unfortunately, I think we're going to have to decide what we want to be. And if you linger in that middle ground, you may get stomped on eventually. And again, I'm not being clairvoyant or trying to say that I know what's going to happen, but the people who define their niche and go after it really hard generally do very well. The firms that you described where there were a settlement type firm as opposed to a litigation firm, they have realized, or a lot of them have realized, that getting that strong litigator can be a plus. It's tricky because it's a different mindset. And that's why, quite honestly, firms like yours survive so well. You found that niche. And,
I would much rather partner with someone like me, because selfishly I would love to get the cases, but they have to do what's best for them. And what I found is a lot of those firms, even when they do that, there'll still be certain cases where it makes sense to bring in a partner to work, whether it's expensive or complicated. And frankly, those are the cases that are more fun and more profitable anyway. If I could just work on those and not have to work on some other stuff, it would be fun.
Yeah, that's our experience also. But again, what you don't want to do is be one of those firms that we're just plowing ahead and not looking about what's going on in the industry and not paying attention and just looking for what is our top line and we're shooting for a number. If you can pay attention to those clients and what their individual needs are and build systems and processes to address them, those are the firms that are most successful, and I propose that'll be most successful in the long term also.
And just as an aside, one thing I want to add to that, if you have referrers, people that refer you cases, especially other lawyers, look at what they want and what's going to make them happy and how you can give them a better experience.
I remember a very detailed conversation you and I had about that. You actually have two clients. You have the other lawyer, the referrer, and the actual client, and keeping them happy is important. And by doing that and keeping them in the loop, and I know we develop systems to do that. So
yeah, for example, we don't market to our clients for additional cases anymore because we found out that was pissing off our referring lawyers. Yeah. And the referring lawyer is going to have a regular steady stream of cases for us. The client probably isn't. And so that's a choice we made. Now, that's not the right choice. I would think most firms ought to be marketing to their clients, their current and former clients, to get friends, family, additional cases. But because of my specific business model, it was counterproductive.
That's why I say that every firm is different, and finding what your strategy is and really setting up your processes to go that direction is important. And also, again, I'll just piggyback on one thing that I know you do is reporting back to those referrers and letting them know, hey, we accepted the case. This is the status of the case. And guess what? When we settle, you give them a check and they don't have to call. Those are the things that are important that will keep you in business into the future.
Yeah, and finding out what they want. We have referring lawyers, or we have true co-counsel. They want to be on the pleadings. They want to show up to things. We have people that want a monthly meeting to go over a general status of the case. And we have people that want us to say, if I want to deal with the case, I want to send it to you. And they want us to call them when the check gets there. And all in between. And it's finding out, what does your customer want and giving it to them. But you talked about transparency, and this is something I'm really struggling with. Mm-hmm. And so, one thing I learned, just as an aside, is that when I formed a leadership team, at first it was just lawyers, and we'd be operating on what we thought was going on with other parts of the firm. And then we would find out often that what we understood was third hand and 3 months out of date, and we were solving problems that weren't there anymore. And so we have non-lawyers on our leadership team now too, which has made an incredible difference to have our operations manager and our marketing manager in our leadership team meetings, fully informed, knowing what's going on, including the finances, including, all the issues. And I found that transparency has been good. And we're struggling with, some people have worked great remotely. Some people need to come back in the office. Mm-hmm. How do we do that? I know we need to be transparent, but how do we tell people, you don't do so well out there. You need to come home, and other people.
Hey, look, I think this is, and I don't want to simplify it too much, but it's KPIs again. If they are not performing at the level they were performing when they were in the office, there has to be a conversation if they don't want to come back in. And now once they realize it, they may change. I don't know, but if anything, Michael, that we can help make objective instead of subjective, it is. I guess a brilliant statement. But if it's objective, it's much clearer, easier to understand. If like demand's out or whatever the KPI is, you were doing so much better here than there. And if they say, well, look, my kid's screaming or whatever happened in there, then unfortunately, it's like, look, we're going to expect the same production, and we need to have that discussion. So, and again, I don't think we go against any laws or any rules, especially as I feel like, or hopefully we're winding down the pandemic now. what are your requirements? What can you get them to do? I think, again, it's communication, it's culture, it's transparency. I have a good friend who formed Vista with me, Chad Dudley. He says that he thinks that the right number is about 10% of the people in your firm should know everything. So what do I mean by that? If you're a 30-person firm, there are probably 3 people that there should be total 100% transparency, and then you have to be obviously selective. But if you're 300 people, that number comes to 30. And maybe that doesn't hold true as it goes that far out. But again, we fall on transparency when at all possible. I don't believe in sharing payroll numbers and things like that. I mean, there are certain things that when I say total transparency, it doesn't go that far. But hey, you know what? Our paralegal compensation was X, and that's all the paralegals together. So you don't know who, but those things become relevant, and I think can be important to the others within your firm. So I don't know if I hit your answer.
You did. You because I've got a meeting later this week to start talking about what our roles are going to be, and I just realized now let's come up with an objective set of roles. If you can do X, Y, and Z, and this is how we're going to measure it, you can work from home. If you can't, then you need to work in the office.
Yes, and we have to define what those are and what the outputs should be. And I think you'll have some people. It's a bell curve, of course, but you'll have some people who embrace that, and some people who for one reason or another just can't do it. I personally get more done at my office, and I don't know why it is. When I'm at home, there's 1,000 other things that I could be doing, and I choose now to do those in the evening on Saturday.
I have found that now that I'm coming back in the office, I'm here to work, and I work, and it's just like when they say, you should only sleep and do one other thing in your bed. You shouldn't read in your bed. You shouldn't get on the computer in your bed. And I break that rule because that way your body knows when I lay down, it's time to go to sleep.
I'm using that one, man. You lost me a while ago.
Okay.
I'm using that.
But that's what the sleep exercise. Then you'll fall asleep more quickly because your body knows I'm laying in bed. There's no one next to me. It's time to go to sleep. And so there is that. When I get to the office, I'm so much more productive because my brain knows. Okay, I'm in my workplace. And then when I get home, okay, I can get home. I can talk to my kids. I can watch TV. I can make dinner for my wife. Whatever it's going to be. I'm not in the workplace. And when I have that separation. And then I've got a 21-mile drive between the two places. So it gives my mind time to make that adjustment. And it's so much healthier.
It's interesting how our brains work. And we could get into a discussion. I've read a lot about our limbic system and, how we think. And when we walk into places, it makes us feel this way. Very interesting thoughts there. But anyway, look, I very much appreciate you letting me come back and talk to you.
Absolutely. One last, I know we're out of time, but if someone wants to work with you or wants to learn more about you, and I know you're transformational, not just in my firm, but helping me get through some really existential struggles when we had a partnership breakup and some other things that could have taken me down. And you really held my hand and gave me some great guidance and got me through it. If someone else wants to check you all out or learn more about you, what are some things that they can do?
I'll give you 3 ways. There's our website. This is www.vistacact.com. The CT is consulting team. So www.vistacact.com. My email address is tmckey@vistact.com. Or you can call me on my cell phone, and it's 225-931-7045. And if I can't get to it, which sometimes that happens, I will return the call, or we'll have someone get in touch with you. And we'd love to hear from you.
And we'll have a link to your website and also to the conference that's coming up here in May. You said May 6th?
May 6th and 7th in Dallas at the Adolphus, and we've got really some great speakers. I'm very excited about that. We have a guy from Franklin Covey to talk about leadership and management, and we have a guy named Dave D, who is an expert in NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming. If you don't know anything about that, it's fascinating. Can help in your intake department and help with picking juries and that kind of thing. So Those are just the two big speakers, and we have a lot of others also. So love to have you.
Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll probably be talking about a few other things soon. Just as we're making some transitions, I might need a little bit of advice, especially since you've added. We didn't have time to get this, some people in culture and leadership to your team, and that's my big focus of the firm. So we will be in touch, and thank you so much for joining us today, Tim.
No, you're very welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us on Trial Lawyer Nation. I hope you enjoyed our show. If you'd like to receive updates, insider information, and more from Trial Lawyer Nation, sign up for our mailing list at triallawyernation.com. You can also visit our episodes page on the website for show notes and direct links to any resources in this or any past episode. To help more attorneys find our podcast, please like, share, and subscribe to our podcast on any of our social media outlets. If you'd like access to exclusive, plaintiff lawyer-only content and live monthly discussions with me, send a request to join the Trial Lawyer Nation Insider Circle Facebook group. Thanks again for tuning in. I look forward to having you with us next time on Trial Lawyer Nation.
Each year, the law firm of Cowan Rodriguez Peacock pays millions of dollars in co-counsel fees to attorneys nationwide on trucking and commercial vehicle cases. If you have an injury case involving death or catastrophic injuries and would like to partner with our firm, please contact us. You can reach DeLisi Friday by calling 210-941-1301 or send an email to delisi@cowanlaw.com. That's DELISI@cowanlaw.com. She will coordinate a time for Michael Cowan to speak with you in person or by phone to discuss the case in detail and see where we can add value in a partnership. This podcast has been hosted by Michael Cowan and is not intended to, nor does it create the attorney-client privilege between our host, guest, and any listener for any reason. Content from the podcast is not to be interpreted as legal advice. All thoughts and opinions expressed herein are only those from which they came.